So Joseph Parker becomes the latest heavyweight to turn down an opportunity to face Filip Hrgovic for the IBF mandatory position. His manager David Higgins said the following: "There is an economic problem with Hrgovic. When we built up Parker, we built a fan base in New Zealand. We funded, paying big money to stage Parker versus Andy Ruiz in New Zealand. Does Hrgovic have a home fan base anywhere? He has attained a high ranking, but has no fan base, so the money on offer is laughable for somebody like Parker. Also, this fight is at the back of the eliminator queue because the other belts must be sorted out. So Parker could fight Hrgovic for a payday that would barely cover his training costs, win, then sit out for a year waiting for his shot." All right, those are the words of David Higgins. Now, what do you guys make of this? Is Higgins just saying what a lot of people in the boxing community, like myself and others, are saying, and therefore he's just using that as a convenient excuse? Or is it actually the truth? Because Hrgovic's people, Sauerland, have said that these guys are not turning the fight down with Hrgovic because of money issues, because they haven't even bothered to, hear an offer. They haven't even bothered to sit down at the negotiating table to even get to the stage where they're talking money. But what I would say to Team Hrgovic is you need to make people big offers. So I get with Luis Ortiz, they never managed to sit down at the negotiating table, but put some offers out there. Stump up some serious cash, approach Joseph Parker and say, here you go. We're willing to pay you this amount of money for the Hrgovic fight. And Eddie Hearn needs to get involved in this as well. I know Eddie Hearn co-promotes Hrgovic. And when you've got a heavyweight of the quality that Hrgovic apparently is or potentially is, you really need to be investing in his career just the same way that Eddie Hearn invested in Anthony Joshua's career, just the same way that David Higgins talked about investing in Joseph Parker's career here. That's what Eddie Hearn, Sauerland, etc. need to do for Filip Hrgovic. Now, as far as building a fan base and whatever the case may be, yeah, obviously boxing is a business. And if they want to try and recoup the money that they are going to need to invest to get a good opponent in with Hrgovic, then perhaps they could do it in Croatia or, wherever, some place that has a big Croatian population, perhaps. Apparently, the Chinese heavyweight, who's also signed to Eddie Hearn, I believe, he's certainly on DAZN, Zhili Zhang, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. Apparently, he says that he's not scared of Hrgovic and he's willing to get in with him. He's got an extensive amateur background. You wouldn't think Hrgovic would have too many issues with him, but you never know. Perhaps he'll surprise us. Perhaps the times I've seen him, he's been underperforming. Maybe he needs somebody like Hrgovic to bring the best out of himself. We'll see. But at the moment, that's what it's looking like. Filip Hrgovic versus this Zhili Zhang character. So is that a fight you guys will be happy with for an IBF eliminator? And you know what David Higgins said regarding Joseph Parker, if he was to go in there, fight Hrgovic and win, he'd be waiting a year for his shot. Well, I haven't looked at the current situation regarding the WBO, the WBA, because that's what obviously Alexander Usyk has, WBO, WBA, as well as the IBF. The IBF generally expedite their mandatories a lot quicker than the other sanctioning bodies. That's the general way it goes with the IBF. So I'm not sure whether what David Higgins is saying is actually valid. I'm on the IBF website here, and as you can see, these are their rules regarding mandatory defenses of their heavyweight title. It says, because of the circumstances inherent in and peculiar to the promotion of major heavyweight championship contests, the heavyweight champion shall defend his championship within 1 year after acquisition by him in a sanctioned contest scheduled for 12 rounds against the leading available contender designated by the championship's chairman. After compliance with his mandatory defense obligation throughout the remaining term of a heavyweight champion's reign, he shall be obligated to mandatorily defend his championship within intervals of no more than 9 months against the leading available contender in the heavyweight division as designated by the championship's chairman. In the interim periods, the heavyweight champion may enter into any contest with any heavyweight contender rated in the top 15 boxers in his weight class as set forth in the ratings of the IBF and subject to the approval of the championship's chairman and the president. All optional defenses and any and all other bouts by a champion shall be concluded at least 60 days prior to the date the champion's mandatory is due and shall be subject to the approval of the championship's chairman and the president. Should the champion lose his title in an optional defense against an opponent rather than the leading available contender, the new champion shall be required to make his mandatory title defense against the leading available contender as designated by the championship's chairman within a period of 9 months after the acquisition. Within the 9-month defense period set forth above, and with the prior approval of the championship's chairman, the new champion may engage in an optional defense of his title against a ranked opponent in the top 15 contenders in the weight class as rated by the IBF. However, should the title change hands as a result of such an optional contest, the newly crowned champion inherits the mandatory obligation of the prior champion and must defend the title within the time remaining for the champion from who he won the title. Okay, so what I get from this is a new champion has to defend his IBF heavyweight title within 12 months of acquiring the title. So with Usyk, he beat Anthony Joshua last September. So you would imagine that he's got until this September coming, 2022, to fight his mandatory. So what David Higgins is saying there about if Joseph Parker was to beat Hrgovic, he'd have to wait a year from that point to get his shot, that doesn't appear to be true. Because the IBF, again, usually expedite their mandatories a lot more quickly than the other sanctioning bodies. Now, the other thing it said there is if a champion loses to somebody other than the top-ranked contender, the mandatory for the IBF, then instead the new champion will only have 9 months to defend his title. Let me just double check here. Is that what I got from here? Should a champion lose his title, okay, as designated within a 9-month period after the acquisition? Optional contest, new inherits the mandatory obligation. Okay, so it also says here, I mean, I'm not sure which sub-clause to go by here, but it says, however, should the title change hands as a result of an optional contest? Well, Anthony Joshua against Usyk wasn't an optional contest. It was a mandatory for the WBO, but it wasn't a mandatory for the IBF. So how did the IBF look at situations like that, where a guy has multiple belts, he's not defending his IBF, but he is defending his whatever, WBO, WBA. Do they count that as a voluntary defense? I don't know which rules would apply, but either way, it would appear as though Usyk has to face his IBF mandatory either within 12 months of the Anthony Joshua fight or within 9 months. Either way, it's not going to be Joseph Parker waiting 12 months from the point, if he was able to beat Hrgovic from that point, he wouldn't be waiting 12 months from then, according to the IBF rules. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this whole tragic comedy. That's the only way to describe it at the moment, of trying to get Hrgovic in with anybody decent for an IBF eliminator. Let me know.